Good evening, members of the executive, officers. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Waverley Executive. My first item this evening, which is the first item on the agenda, is to confirm the minutes. And that's the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 8th of October and the 31st of October, which have been laid on the table for 30 minutes prior to this meeting. If you're agreeable, I will sign those at the end of the meeting. Executive, are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'll move on to item 2, which is apologies for absence. Ms Cameron.
Thank you, Leader. I've had apologies from Councillor Denis.
Thank you. And item 3, which is declarations of interest. Any declarations?
None received, Leader.
Thank you very much. Moving to item 4, questions from members of the public. Any questions received?
No questions this evening.
Thank you. Questions from members? Any received?
No questions from members either.
Thank you. In that case, we'll move to item 6. And item 6 is the redevelopment of land adjacent to 85 Arons Hill, Godalming, and 13 Ryle Road, Farnham. And the portfolio holder is Councillor King. Councillor Mrs King, would you like to introduce this item? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. Part of this report is exempt, so I will avoid straying into the exempt bit. There's a couple of plots of land within the borough, one at Arons Hill in Godalming and one at Ryle Road in Farnham. Government funding was previously obtained to deliver starter homes on both these sites, but the government changed its mind and we used funding for other things. So this report seeks approval for a budget to appoint the build contractor to build out 2 plots of the land in Waverley's ownership to build 6 new affordable homes, 4 one-bedroom flats in Arons Hill and 2 one-bed flats, one of which will be for wheelchair use at Ryle Road. The funding can be met from the new Affordable Homes Reserve and the financial appraisal is at Exempt Annex 1. Thank you.
Councillor King, thank you. Colleagues, I don't propose to go into exempt on this item. You have got detailed papers within your executive agendas. I think we would all agree that this is an excellent use of this land. We do need affordable homes within Waverley, both in Godalming and in Farnham. And there is a recommendation before you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We move to item 7, which again is Councillor Mrs King, and this one is the Community Centre building and land in Cranley, and that's the transfer from the housing revenue account, which is also known as the HRA, to the general fund, found on pages 15 to 20 of your agenda. Councillor King.
Thank you again, Leader. I'm really glad to bring this report before you. It's been going on for far too long. Members will recall the issues we had over Rowley's adopting the building and moving it on from the old sheltered housing for a long, long time ago, which left us in a strange position with the existing part of the building, which is run as a day centre, being in the ownership of the general fund, and this additional bit, which is now also going to be used by Rowley's within the HRA. As the use of buildings or any other services being for non-housing use, being paid for out of the HRA, this needs to be transferred to the general fund. This report covers it all off. We've had legal advice, for which I thank the legal department for. And the conclusion on that, we've also agreed that we will transfer a sum of £25,000 from the HRA to the general fund to enable some ongoing maintenance to help ease the burden upon them. Thank you.
Councillor King, thank you very much. Colleagues, any comments, or can we move to the recommendations? In that case, there are 3 recommendations to that item. Can I take those as agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 8, which is the Community Infrastructure Levy, also known as Cllr, and that's the governance arrangements. Given that Councillor Dinas is actually away this week, Councillor Storey has very kindly offered or been volunteered to to cover that item. Councillor Storey.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I threw myself wholeheartedly into my role here. As the Executive is aware, the Council adopted Cllr fairly recently, and as a result of that, we're not likely to see any Cllr receipts for some considerable time, and we have an opportunity now to make sure we have the proper governance arrangements for that. This item proposes such a governance arrangement. It comes as a result of discussions with other boroughs who are already using Cllr and taking and cherry-picking the good things to produce what we hope is the most workable arrangement. It suggests a governance board who will look at the suggested infrastructure projects and compare them against the Regulation 123 list, provide priorities and so on. The board would be 3 executive members who are most concerned with this process and 4 non-executive members. How that is decided has not yet been agreed, and the board will recommend to the executive for the spending of the Cllr money. There are 5 recommendations, Leader, and I would urge support for all of those.
Colleagues, any comments on this? I think it's a pretty comprehensive report. And as I say, I think this is something that we all want to see moving forward. We've got the adoption of Cllr starting in March, but this is obviously in parallel with that a key piece of work. So you have 5 recommendations before you. Are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Moving to your next item on the agenda, which is item 9. That relates to the proposed public space protection order in relation to dog fouling, and that's the response to the public consultation. Councillor Mrs. Else. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So the irresponsible actions of a minority of dog owners have made it necessary for us to implement or to bring to this executive new powers to deal with a range of antisocial behaviour. And after consulting with residents, a significant number have indicated that failing to clear up after a dog has fouled was a big problem for a lot of our residents. Overwhelming support for the introduction of a fixed penalty notices for those failing to do so has been given. Exemptions are included for blind people and people with a disability. So if it does include a requirement to dispose of dog waste appropriately in response to the problem of bags of dog waste disposed indiscriminately. So, therefore, I recommend the order to the executive for adoption, and that is the proposed public space protection order, dog fouling. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Else, thank you very much. I think, first of all, I'd like to thank the Scrutiny Committee for the work they did on this as well. This is an item and something that does cause an awful lot of concern amongst our residents. I frequently get feedback on this matter, and you know, it is unfortunate that some irresponsible owners have caused concern by their actions or inactions. So, as I say, I'm pleased to see this coming forward, and let's hope that it helps to change the culture of those individuals, and we have a safer, cleaner borough as a result of this. Colleagues, there is one recommendation before you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. The next item, item 10, is the animal welfare licensing of activities involving animals, regulations for 2018, and that, I believe, is Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Leader. The Animal Welfare Act 2006 was introduced to ensure that animals are not mistreated, and these regulations came into effect earlier this year. There is a new fee structure to replace all existing fees and charges for animal licences. The structure is designed to recover the costs of administration, inspection and regulation of the new regime. Officers have worked with colleagues in other Surrey authorities to ensure consistency over the level of fees charged. The new fee structure is set out in Annex 1, and I commend it to the Executive. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton, thank you. Colleagues, any comments, or can we move to the recommendation? In that case, there is one recommendation before you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 11 is the new Council's draft HR strategy for the next 5 years, 2018 to 2023. And this report really is an excellent report that sets out the strategy for the next 5 years, outlining our plans within HR, learning and development, recruitment and payroll. Because it's really important. We've adopted a corporate plan, we've adopted a new economic development strategy, but ultimately the most important aspect of any organisation and any successful organisation is its people. So it's only right and proper that we have coming before us tonight the draft of the new HR strategy. And I'd like to really thank the ONS for their feedback. They've done a lot of work on this, and that's included within the report. I know it's been consulted on widely, and there's been a lot of interaction and feedback with the senior members of staff here at Waverley to make sure that they're fully on board with this, which is really good news. And I'd also like to thank our, well, she's not so new now, Head of HR, Mrs. Meakin, for all her work and the hard work her team and the senior officers have really put into this, because it's an excellent piece of work and it really helps us to shape where we want to go as an organisation, where we want to go, as I say, with our staff, and the opportunities as well that we want to give to them and we want to deliver. So, as I say, there's one recommendation before you this evening, colleagues. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving to item 12, which is the review of polling places. Colleagues, you'll be aware that in a number of parts of the borough, as a result of ongoing review, we look at polling stations, and obviously with elections coming up next year, another piece of work has been done on that. We continually have representations from our residents, from members of the public, and it's been really important to look at those and look at the best and most suitable venues for holding as polling stations. Wherever possible, we try to avoid schools so that we do as least impact as possible on children and parents. We are very mindful of that. We've got some good news in terms of Farnham, because we've now got the reopened Memorial Hall, so the use of Potter's Gate School can now cease, and we can move back to the Memorial Hall as a polling station. We've also got some details of the other changes that are proposed. I think you'll all agree that the team having been out, the elections team have been out and inspected these to make sure that these new venues are suitable and have the appropriate facilities and so forth. But again, as I say, it's about making sure that we're continually reviewing and making best use of local assets for polling day. And as I say, this is now very timely given where we are in the election cycle. So there are a number of recommendations relating to the changes to polling stations, and there are 5 recommendations before you this evening. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move to a property matter, which is the Broadwater Park Golf Club, and that's Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to grant an extended lease to the golf club. It is in the Council's interest to facilitate this due to the potential maintenance responsibilities that would transfer to Waverley if we did not have a tenant in place. There is additional benefit of an improved facility, and the new lease will encourage and ensure the golf club can improve and invest in the property. I urge you to support the recommendation.
Colleagues, you've got some detailed papers on this item before you that you've obviously had the opportunity to read within your agendas. I don't intend to go into exempt unless anyone wishes to. If anyone wishes to go into exempt to discuss this further, could you please indicate? In that case, can I take it that you agree the one recommendation before us under item 13?
Agreed.
Thank you. We have another property matter under item 14, which is the easement of access to run beams at Horsham Road, Ewhurst. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. This report is about granting an easement to allow access to the residential property. The fee makes this attractive and acceptable to the council and also gives access to the residential property holder. There is one recommendation.
Colleagues, as with the previous item, I don't propose to go into exempt. You have detailed papers within your agenda. Is that recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We've got 2 further items. If you would like to go into exempt on either of those, again, you've got detailed papers within your agendas in relation to both items 16 and 17, which are both, one's a planning matter, one's a property matter. Can you indicate, will you want to go into exempt, or have you had the opportunity to study those in detail and we can stay in open?
Staying open.
Staying open? Right, okay. In that case, if we move to item 16, which is a planning matter, that is actually a request for a supplementary estimate. Colleagues, you will read and you will see within your papers in the detailed report why that supplementary estimate is required. There is one recommendation to that item, and that is that the request for a supplementary estimate be approved. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We move to item 17, which is a property matter, and that relates to a lease extension. Again, I'm not proposing to go into exempt as you've indicated. We've all read the detail on that property matter that's set out in that report. And again, there is one recommendation. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, colleagues. There is nothing else for us to consider tonight at this meeting, and I therefore declare the meeting closed. Thank you.